You've heard of the Mandela effect, right? It's that weird phenomenon where a bunch of people collectively misremember something, like how some people swear up and down that the Monopoly man used to have a monocle. He didn't. Or how others vividly recall Ed McMahon handing out big checks for Publishers Clearing House. He never did. The name of the Mandela effect comes from the fact that a surprising number of people claim to remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s, when in reality he lived until 2013. Some conspiracy theorists take this as proof that reality is somehow glitchy, that we're sliding between timelines where history plays out slightly differently. For myself, I always thought the Mandela effect was no big deal. People's memories are fuzzy, end of story, so what? But then it happened to me. My high school class held their 10-year reunion in our school's gymnasium. The gym was decked out like a high school dance, a DJ spinning records, streamers dangling from the ceiling, a long table for refreshments. There were poster-sized photos of our cultural icons on the walls: Adele and Idina Menzel, Black Lives Matter, and the Babadook. Above the refreshment table hung a gigantic banner proclaiming, "Class of 2015, we'll never forget." I entered the gym just as the DJ was queuing up Iggy Azalea's Fancy. On the floor, several dozen late 20-somethings sprung into action, lip-syncing Iggy's opening rap furiously, as if they were still in the murder business. I shook my head, feeling a surge of embarrassment for them. I'm not sure why, but I felt a nervous lump in my throat as my gaze scanned the room. I felt a bit out of place. I mean, sure, I'd gone to school with these people for 4 years, but that felt like a lifetime ago. So many of the faces looked like strangers, like I'd never met them before. But I shrugged it off. My wife, Jennifer, said she'd felt the same estranged vibe when she'd gone to her reunion last year. I guess no matter how close we get to people, time eventually makes strangers of us all. I headed toward the refreshment table, eyeing the punch bowl. I chuckled as I mused whether anyone had spiked it. I was getting confused looks from people as I passed them, as if they didn't recognize me. That felt unsettling, but it sort of made sense, since I didn't recognize them either. Then I bumped into a woman I recognized, literally. "Sorry!" I shouted, straining to be heard over the pumping music. I did a double take. "Hey, you're Haley, right?" Haley nodded weakly, but said nothing. She gaped at me as if she couldn't believe her eyes. "Mike!" I said, reminding her of my name. "Mike Collins!" "Yeah," she replied, her face contorting into the same confused stare I'd already seen on a half-dozen faces. Then she turned on her heel and scurried off, her chestnut hair rippling behind her like a cape. Weird, I thought. But then a memory swam into my consciousness. It was a distant, hazy image, Christmas break. A beer-lubricated party in a suburban basement. Haley and I on a couch blitzed, making out, and very horizontal. I chortled. No wonder she was freaked out, I thought. Nothing like seeing a long-forgotten hookup to throw cold water on your night. I was still laughing when I found myself face-to-face with another blast from the past, Bobby Reynolds. "Hey!" I exclaimed excitedly, offering a fist bump. "How you been?" But Bobby didn't seem happy to see me. Fine," he answered, his eyes shaded in perplexity. "Mike Collins," I said, figuring that Bobby had forgotten my name. Bobby said nothing. I let out a frustrated huff. "Okay," I declared. "I've been getting weird vibes from people since I got here. What is it? Has my face really changed that much?" Bobby squinted. "It's just that," he intoned, his gaze falling to the floor. "It's just that I thought you were dead." "No friggin' way," I cried. "Where'd you get a dumb idea like that?" Bobby shook his head. I don't know, I just thought. He shrugged. I mean, everyone kind of assumed. I cut him off. Well, as you can see, I snapped, stretching out my arms, I'm not dead. Sure, bro, Bobby said. He stood stock still for a second, then patted my shoulder. Take care, okay? I watched Bobby shuffle away. This was messed up. Dead? Me? Where'd such a stupid rumor come from? My mouth went dry. I made my way to the refreshment table and ladled some red punch into a plastic cup. I gulped the punch greedily, relieved as the sugary drink coated my throat. I looked up. Dead ahead of me on the wall were a series of poster-sized photos, blow-ups of various students' yearbook photos. I studied the picture of a familiar Latina, her hazel eyes alive with fire. Her face exuded ambition like she was eager to take on the world. There was a placard posted beneath the picture. Most likely to succeed, it read, which had been her superlative in our class yearbook. I nodded. I remembered Trini Lopez, how driven she'd been, and how frighteningly smart. I vaguely recalled seeing a newspaper article about her a few years back. She was now an attorney at the Federal Communications Commission, or something prestigious like that. My eyes roved down the line of pictures and placards. Our class jock had been dubbed most likely to win a gold medal. Our class clown, he'd been most likely to host Saturday Night Live, and so on until... At the far end of the wall was my photo. I squinted to read the placard beneath it. Most likely to die first. What the hell? I gasped, but then I cracked into a grin. No wonder everyone thought I died. Someone saw my photo with the stupid placard, thought it was true, and spread the moronic rumor. Mystery solved. My relief was only momentary, though, because yes, we'd voted for a most likely to die first for our yearbook. It had been a joke, a bit of teenage gallows humor. But I knew the unlucky student we'd chosen had been someone else, not me. I racked my brain for a name. Who'd it been? Who was our most likely to die first? A smile crept to my face as the image of a chunky, happy-go-lucky kid surfaced in my thoughts. Brad Barman. He'd been the kid who taught me to use a beer bong. The parties at his house were legendary, bacchanalia popping with teenage sound and fury. In retrospect, it was amazing that we'd survived the parties he hosted without getting arrested, or worse. Just then, a raven-haired, serious-eyed young woman approached the punch bowl. I recognized her in an instant, Jessica Rosenbaum, our class secretary. She'd been the one who'd organized our reunion. Jessica, I said, tapping her on the shoulder. She darted around, spooked. Once again, I found myself on the receiving end of an unnerving stare. I ignored it. I pointed to my picture. Jessica, what's up with this? Why do you have my picture above most likely to die first? Jessica kept staring. I pressed on. Most likely to die first was Brad Barman, remember? Bewilderment seized Jessica's face. Who? My frustration boiled over. Oh, come on, I cried. The joke's over. Brad Barman, you have to remember him. His parents were never home. We went to his house for keg parties. We called him Last Call Barman. How could you forget? Jessica stepped back, intimidated by my onslaught. I don't know, she muttered, then slinked away. I hurled my empty cup into the trash. I'd had enough of this scene. I was going home. I was driving too fast, but I didn't care. My hands clenched the steering wheel as the car zoomed along the shadowy road. I took one deep breath after another in an effort to calm myself down. I thought about my wife's mantra. Always look for the funny side of life. But what was so damned funny about a room full of people thinking you were dead? Then an anecdote sprang to my thoughts. I'd majored in English in college, and one of my favorite writers was the humorist Mark Twain. Once upon a time, newspapers got false word that Twain had died and promptly printed the story. But one amused journalist who knew that the rumor was false reached out to Twain for comment. "I've heard on good authority that I'm dead," Twain had deadpanned, "but rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated." "Greatly exaggerated," I hooted. Twain's raw wit boosted my mood, as it always did. I decided that when I got home, I'd tell Jennifer about how I died at my reunion, then ask her if it was too late to take out a life insurance policy on me. Laughter overcame me. Maybe I laughed too hard because just then I felt a headache coming on. I spotted a mini-mart and decided to take a break. I parked my car and entered the store. I scooped up a Gatorade and travel pack of Tylenol, then stepped up to the front. The cashier, a sleepy-eyed young man wearing a blue shirt and jeans, studied me. His name tag read Chad. "You okay, man?" Chad asked. "You look a bit pale." I snickered. "It's been a long night," I explained. "A weird, long night." "I'll bet," Chad replied and rang me up. Outside, I washed down a couple of the Tylenols with Gatorade and got back into my car. The headache went away as I drove the rest of the way to my house. Home, sweet home. I inched my car into the driveway and killed the engine. I walked toward my house slowly, contemplating how I'd tell Jennifer about my surreal evening. Our mailbox stood atop a pole by the sidewalk. I noticed that its flag was still up. As usual, my wife had neglected to take in the day's mail. With a sigh, I sauntered over to it, opened it, and drew out the mail. I leafed through the letters and bills as I paced toward the house. I froze. The mail, it was all addressed to Brad Barman. A shiver sparked through me. I looked up at my house. A woman peered out of the front window. She looked baffled. It wasn't Jennifer. Numbly, I staggered back to my car and drove away, my thoughts a blurred jumble. I don't know what to do. I'm sitting in the parking lot of a pancake house. I've been here for the last 2 hours. I've sent out texts to all my contacts, but so far, no one's replied. That's why I'm posting this. I need help. I'm leaving my phone number at the end of this post. If someone, anyone, went to Hall High School 10 years ago and remembers me, please call me. My name is Mike Collins, and I'm not dead. It had been 3 months since my sister, Eliza, vanished without a trace. No calls, no notes, just silence. The police had searched, questioned, and eventually given up. But I hadn't. I couldn't. She was my sister, my best friend, and something inside me told me she was still out there. Then one night my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. It was an unknown number, and at 2 a.m., nothing good ever came from answering unknown calls. But something in me hesitated, then pressed accept. A shaky, weak voice whispered through the speaker, "Josh, come get me." My heart stopped. "Eliza, please," she breathed. "The old house, the one we used to play in as kids. But Josh, it's not safe. I don't know if I'm alone." The line went dead. The old house, the abandoned cabin deep in the woods where we used to play hide and seek. It had been empty for years, rotting and forgotten. Why was she there? And what did she mean by not alone? I didn't think. I grabbed my keys and drove. The road twisted through the forest, the trees looming like silent watchers. My headlights barely cut through the thick fog rolling in from the hills. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. No crickets, no wind, just an eerie stillness that settled deep into my bones. When I finally reached the clearing, the house stood waiting. Its wooden frame sagged under years of decay, its windows like hollow eyes staring into the night. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of damp wood, and something else, something foul. I stepped onto the porch, The boards groaned under my weight. I hesitated, suddenly aware of just how alone I was. "Eliza." My voice barely carried in the dense silence. Nothing. I pushed open the door. Inside, the house was even darker than the forest. My flashlight beam flickered across the dust-coated floor, the broken furniture, the peeling wallpaper. And then, faint, almost imperceptible, came the sound of sobbing. I followed it. In the farthest corner of the room, she was there. Huddled against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, rocking slightly. Her hair hung in tangled clumps over her face, her clothes torn and dirty. "Eliza!" I rushed forward, dropping to my knees. "What happened to you? Where have you been?" She looked up, and my stomach twisted into a knot. Her face was gaunt, her eyes sunken and hollow. Her lips trembled. "Josh, you shouldn't have come." A shiver ran down my spine. "What do you mean? We need to get out of here. Come on." She grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were ice cold. "It won't let me leave." A slow, deliberate creak echoed from upstairs. I froze. Then another. And another. Footsteps. We weren't alone. My flashlight trembled as I lifted it toward the staircase. "Eliza," I whispered. "Who's here?" She shook her head violently. "Not who. What?" The footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. My breath hitched as I aimed the light. A figure stood there, tall, too tall, its limbs stretched unnaturally long, its head tilted at an impossible angle. It had no eyes, just hollow pits that seemed to drink in the light. Its mouth was a jagged, gaping hole, like someone had carved it into its face. The air turned ice cold. It let out a sound, a deep, guttural clicking noise, something unnatural, something that didn't belong in this world. Then it moved, fast. I grabbed Eliza's arm, yanking her to her feet. "Run!" The front door slammed shut. "Windows!" I shouted. We bolted toward the nearest one. I grabbed an old chair and hurled it at the glass. It shattered. "Go!" Eliza hesitated just for a second, and that was all it needed. The thing was behind us. A shadow loomed over me, a whisper right against my ear. "She's mine!" A cold hand brushed my shoulder. I spun, swinging the flashlight wildly. Nothing. But the house was breathing. The walls shuddered, the wooden beams groaned and twisted. The whole place seemed to pulse, like a living thing. "Josh!" Eliza's scream snapped me back. I grabbed her and pushed her through the broken window. She fell hard, cutting her arm on the shards. I scrambled out after her, landing on the cold earth. The house shuddered violently behind us, the doorway now a gaping black maw. "Run!" I yelled. We ran. The trees blurred past us, the wind howling in my ears. I didn't dare look back, but I felt it, the weight of something chasing us, watching us. We reached my car, gasping, shaking. My hands fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life and I floored it. Eliza sat beside me, staring out the window, shivering. "It let me go," she whispered. "But I don't think it wanted to." I gripped the wheel tighter. "You're safe now." But I knew that was a lie. As we sped down the road, I risked one last glance in the rearview mirror. The house stood still in the distance. But in the upstairs window, a pair of hollow eyes stared back at me. And then, the lights inside flickered. One by one, like something inside was laughing. It was during the spring break of my second year at college that I got a phone call from my Uncle Andrew, asking me if I'd be willing to spend a few days over at his house. My grandfather had been sick for a long while, and it had gotten to the stage where the primary focus was less on treating him and more on just making him as comfortable as possible for whatever time he had left. I didn't envy anyone in that situation. Grandpa, facing eternity in a house that wasn't his, with no company but a son he barely spoke to these days. And Andrew, his girlfriend, had died giving birth to their daughter 7 months ago, and now he was left alone to care for a dying father on top of an infant. I'd like to say I was making a selfless decision by coming over, but the truth was, I was lonely. College had been a miserable experience for me, friendless and isolated. Ever since my mother passed away a year ago, I had no one to talk to at all. So I accepted, not out of duty, but out of a desperate need for human interaction. How hard could it be? Watch the baby, fetch Grandpa what he needed. Andrew's house was deep in the sticks, a good 40-minute drive from the nearest town. My family was spread out across a rural county, so barren roads and distant farmhouses weren't new to me. The house itself was unremarkable from the outside, just another 2-story structure standing alone in the vast emptiness. Andrew answered the door within moments of me ringing the bell. He looked about the same as I remembered. "Ah, Nick, how you doing? Thanks so much again for coming," he said, his voice warm but tired. "Nah, not like I had much going on anyway," I replied, and he chuckled, though his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "Come on in. Throw your jacket on the hanger. Want some coffee?" "Sure." "All right, have a seat in the living room. First door to your left." I took his invitation and stepped inside. The moment I did, I noticed the air in the house had a distinct scent. Old books and something faintly musty, like a place that time had forgotten. The entryway was dimly lit, heavy curtains blocking out the daylight. The house creaked underfoot, as if sighing under the weight of years. The living room was a mix of the old and the modern. The walls bore faded wallpaper, remnants of a more ornate past, yet minimalistic furniture tried and failed to mask its age. A chandelier hung above, casting faint yellow light, and an old couch sat before a worn rug. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books that hadn't been touched in years. Andrew returned with 2 mugs of coffee, and we made awkward small talk. He asked about college, though it was clear he didn't remember the last time we had spoken. After a while, he outlined my tasks. "I'll be picking him up from the hospice tomorrow after work. Should be back around 7. Chloe's napping upstairs, so I'm going to get started on dinner. Make yourself comfortable. There are 2 rooms free upstairs. Take your pick." He patted my shoulder and headed to the kitchen. Upstairs, I passed his room, spotting a child's cot beside the bed, where Chloe slept soundly. I spent the rest of the evening on my laptop, buried in college assignments, pausing only for dinner. As I ate, my gaze drifted to a peculiar sight, a small, almost hidden door in the corner of the dining room, partially obscured by a bookshelf. Something about it unsettled me. The wood seemed to shimmer oddly in the dim light. "Is that a closet?" I asked, pointing. Andrew turned, saw what I was gesturing to, and quickly shook his head. "Oh, that? No, just a small little space I haven't really found a use for yet," he said, smiling, though the expression was forced. Before I could press him, the sound of barking interrupted. "Didn't know you had a dog," I remarked. "I don't. Just some stray that's been hanging around lately," he said. Odd, I thought, since the dog clearly had a collar. That night I struggled to sleep. The dog barked on and off for hours, seemingly agitated. Morning came, and Andrew had already left for work. He'd left instructions for Chloe, and I managed, though changing diapers never got any more enjoyable. Bored, I tried the small door, but it was locked. I let it go, figuring it was nothing important. That evening, Andrew arrived home with Grandpa. I was not prepared for how sick he looked. Skin cancer had eaten away at him. His body was a skeleton wrapped in paper-thin, sagging flesh, his eyes sunken, his breathing shallow. He barely spoke, only murmuring vague complaints of pain. "The skin, the flesh, it hurts," he would mutter. Mom had once told me Grandpa was a cruel man, a Vietnam vet who brought his demons home with him, drowning them in alcohol and rage. And yet, looking at him now, all I felt was pity. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, sleep just within reach. Bark, the dog again, then silence, and then whispering. My breath caught. Grandpa's room was right next to mine, and at first I thought he was muttering again, but no, this was different. A second voice responded, not his, Andrew's voice, hushed, urgent. "Number, I've told you already, you can't have him." I froze. Who was he talking to? Silence. Then Grandpa spoke, his voice clearer than I'd ever heard since his arrival. "It's too late. You should have never let it in." A scraping noise. Then a faint tapping. Not from Grandpa's room, from the small door, the one I had tried to open, the one that shimmered in the dim light. A chill ran down my spine. I held my breath, every muscle in my body rigid. Then, from the darkness, a single whisper drifted through the house. Not from Andrew, not from Grandpa. Something else. I'm already inside. Then, the door creaked open, revealing nothing but a yawning black void. A breath of cold air rushed out, carrying a scent of decay. My skin prickled as the whispering grew louder, wrapping around me like unseen fingers. Something shifted in the darkness, something with hollow eyes and a grin too wide to be human. And then the lights flickered out. The walls seemed to breathe, the air thick with the stench of rot. Grandpa's voice, hoarse and terrified, called out, "You brought it back. You were never supposed to open it." And then I felt it. The presence. Watching. Waiting. And the whispering never stopped.